Back in the days, I was working on board of a commercial ship as a second officer. A second officer, in a nutshell, he's the one who's responsible for drawing lines on a navigational chart which the ship has to follow in order to get from port A to port B. At that time, we were assigned to load the project cargo at the port of Mersin in Turkey and take it all the way to the port of Odessa in Ukraine. Well, let me give you a bit of a context in here. To reach to the Black Sea where Odessa is located, a ship must pass through the Dardanelles Strait, cross the Sea of Marmara, and finally pass through the Bosphorus Strait. So, while on the ship, if you turn your head right or left, you still can see the coastline. And while we were crossing the Sea of Marmara, one of our sailors' appendix burst. He was screaming in excruciating pain, sweating profusely, and he was on the verge of passing out. And despite the fact that we had a pharmacy on board, Akash, our skipper, had to be evacuated to the nearest hospital ashore because he needed an emergency appendectomy. So we called our agent at the port of Bandrma, which is located at the Sea of Marmara, and we told him about the situation. We both agreed that Akash's embarkation had to take place in Bandrma, so we changed the ship's course towards that port. And the skipper was finally taken to the hospital, but now we are facing another problem. Our ship's crew consisted of 14 crew members, but now with Akash in the hospital, we're down to 13. And according to the safe manning regulations, we couldn't sail without the required minimum crew of 14. I mean, what could go wrong? Obviously, everything. Let me mention one more thing in here. Any delay beyond the agreed arrival time in Odessa would result in a penalty of around $60,000 a day. That's a lot of money. So we were waiting on pins and needles for good news from our agent. And finally, the agent called. He said, I found a sailor who is ready to sail immediately and has all the required certifications. But there's one issue with Mr. Yildiz, the new skipper. He has no experience at all. This would be the first voyage of his entire life. And one more thing. English is not exactly his cup of tea. But what can we do? We really need one. So I've told him, bring Mr. Yildiz on board. Well, guess what? It turned out to be a very, very nice guy. Funny and easygoing. On his very first day on board, he cooked for us and made an incredibly delicious Turkish sweet called Baklava. And from that day on, we used to call him Mr. Baklava. Well, after Mr. Baklava had earned his good reputation on board, now it's time to perform the duties assigned to him. One of these duties was to grab a pair of binoculars and keep a lookout for other ships and notify the officer of the watch, which happened to be me. You know, things like, hey, there's a ship over there, there's a ship over here, there's a sailing boat approaching, and so on. Things that you may have seen in the Titanic movie. Everything was going super smoothly with Mr. Baklava until we crossed the Bosphorus Strait and started the voyage through the Black Sea. The lights faded and the Turkish coastline disappeared. Now everything you can see was covered in blue. Blue on your left, blue on your right, blue above your head. I mean, what a romantic inner peace building spot. But for Mr. Baklava, it was the definition of a nightmare. He was shivering and sweating as hell. He looked at me and with the very wide eyes and asked, Abi, arası nerede? Translated to, brother, where's the land? I said, well, we are a bit far from the land. He looked at me in disbelief and he said, are you joking? I said, no, we are really away from any land. He stared at me with wide eyes again and shouted, Polisi arayan, temsilcisi arayan, herhangi bir yerini arayan, eve dönmek istiyorum. Translated to, I want to go home. Call the agent, call the police, call anyone. I want to go back home. It turned out that he had a kind of phobia called agoraphobia, when someone panics about not being able to escape or find safety. And obviously, seeing any kind of land gave him this safety feeling. And when it was out of sight, the agoraphobia kicked in. Shortly after, Mr. Baklava became super aggressive and started throwing things at me. Things that really hurt if they land on someone. like a binocular, a spare magnetic compass, a divider, a handheld VHF. I mean, what the heck? To add salt to the injury, due to the heavy marine traffic in the area, ships were everywhere. I could not switch to the autopilot mode. I was steering the ship manually with the steering wheel. I was slipping, waving, and dodging to avoid these flying objects Mr. Baklava is throwing at me while I'm steering the ship. I mean, that's very good that I have some boxing experience. Otherwise, we are in a collision situation. And the crazy part was, every time I tried to reach the phone to call the captain's cabin or anyone, he starts to curse, swear, and bite my hands. You piece of rotten baklava. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I mean, what he was doing could have caused an inevitable collision with other ships. So I opened the flap and pushed the ship's evacuation button. The alarm started blazing, and the captain jumped out of his bed and bolted to the navigation bridge, and the rest of the sailors and engineers had already gotten to their assigned lifeboats to literally evacuate the ship. I gave a quick explanation to the captain about the situation. I said, Mr. Baklava has agoraphobia. He gets into panic and becomes so aggressive when he does not see the land. As you see, you took your shoes off your feet and threw it at me. The captain was completely shocked when Mr. Baklava took his shoes off. He didn't know what to do. I mean, he was trained to avoid other ships, not lunatics at the navigation bridge. I suggested to the captain that he takes over the steering wheel from me and that I take Mr. Baklava forcibly to the ship's pharmacy to give him a sedative drug. And this is what actually happened. I pushed him out of the navigation bridge and dragged him all the way to the ship's pharmacy. He was kicking, swearing, and cursing the whole time. But finally, about 5 minutes after arriving to the pharmacy, he became calmer, more understanding and thoughtful. All of a sudden, he became a sort of a monk. I mean, this sedative that I gave him must have been pretty good. I went back to the navigation bridge to give the captain the good news. The captain was super relieved when he found out that Mr. Baklava had calmed down. I made 2 cups of tea to celebrate this containment of the situation. But while I was on my way out of the navigation bridge, Captain Sergei asked me, "As far as I know, we don't have sedatives on board. You ordered them a couple of days ago, and our company replied that delivery place would be Odessa upon arrival. So what kind of sedative did you give this guy?" I said, "Captain, to be honest, I gave him an old school kind of sedative. A sedative where if you don't know how to slip, dodge, or wave, you don't have no way but to calm down." And then he said, "Иногда важно найти решение, Justin. Ты сказал старые добрые успокоительные." The moral of the story? Well, sometimes only an old school sedative can restore peace and prevent collisions. What about you? Have you ever used this kind of sedatives? Let me know in the comments below.